Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Sometimes buying your first house in a HOA is not a good idea. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Bully a poor stranger, never get your car parked. I headed to a local chain auto parts store last night looking for a particular component for my wife's temperamental car. As my young daughter and I head inside, there was some D-bag guy, henceforth DBG, hanging out in front of the shop, standing next to a heavily modified car, obnoxiously loud spoiler, tons of stickers, enough bass pouring from it to damage nearby concrete. He was yelling over the music, lecturing some poor employee about the magic under his open hood. The employee looked desperate to get away. I went inside, browsed for a few minutes. Okay, honestly, I stared blankly at the components and tried to comprehend what I needed. Then DBG entered. I could tell the exact moment he came in as there was a flood of bass and his loud voice, which didn't lower in volume as the door closed behind him. His speech was eloquent, with F being probably every second or third word. A real peach. The unfortunate employee had followed DBG inside, and now DBG was making demands about his car needs. And bro, that effing dinglehopper like effing yesterday, you know what I mean? I rolled my eyes and hoped that my daughter was learning a life lesson here. Abruptly, there came a shout from DBG, even louder than he had been. Dude, what the F, bro? I reflexively poked my head out of the aisle trying to see what was up. Another customer, some poor bastard, henceforth PB, apparently had the audacity to be up at the counter at the same time as DBG, and now DBG was squaring off with him. What the F is your problem, bro? Sorry, I was just trying to... Do you want to effing go? At this point, I have to note that I'm uncertain what PB did that sparked this reaction. There was a little product on the floor between the two men, like a little flashlight, I think. So I think that PB may have accidentally dropped it or knocked it off a rack. Whatever happened, DBG was completely in PB's face, arms extended and chest puffed out. PB was shrinking away and trying to avoid being beaten to a pulp. As he tried to apologize, he began to surrender. This just fueled the D-bag. DBG, haha, you little effing R-word, look at you. You gonna cry now, bro? Haha. PB backed off, hands up to ward off a potential attack. As soon as he was clear, he booked his butt out of the store. DBG turned back to the employee who was standing behind the counter looking shell-shocked. You believe that crap, bro? Effing R-word thinking he can step? F. At this point, I'm contemplating my options. I'm the kind of guy that can't keep my mouth shut. Maybe I should have something in reach just in case he threatens me. Those tire irons could be handy. Ah, crap, I can't endanger my daughter. Maybe I should just demand he be thrown out or I take my business elsewhere. A millisecond later, a manager appeared next to the employee on the other side of the counter, keeping me from doing something stupid. I shall call him Manager with 20-pound brass balls. MWTBBB for short. MWTPBB. Hey, so that was a 95, right? DBG. F&A, bro, you got it. MWTPBB. We don't, but a warehouse in the next town over does. I already went ahead and ordered it. DBG. Great, when can I pick it up? MWTPBB. Not so fast. I didn't order it for you. I went ahead and ordered it for the store. And after that uncalled for behavior, you're not allowed to shop here anymore. What the F? You see, that's the behavior that we're talking about. By the way, while I was on the computer, I saw that there were 3 more dinglehoppers within a 6-hour radius. I bought them all. Looks like you're out of luck. I can't believe you did. Further, I'm going to ask you once to cut the language in front of the lady, and gestures towards my daughter. Now get out and don't ever come back. DBG stared for a long moment, then stomped out the door, peeled out of the parking lot with a screech. The manager was still at the register when I went to check out. I say, wow, some people, right? He says, story of my life, unfortunately. So I have to ask, did you really buy all the parts he needed? Nah, I did a search and there are none available. Odd part, not many made, just can't get them. But now he thinks he screwed himself out of them, and I get to feel like I stuck up for that poor guy. And our second story. Become the worst neighbor and HOA board member ever? Lose your job and HOA. Me and my wife purchased our first home when we were 24 and 25. We spent months looking at houses and areas and tried to find a forever home in a good school district for potential future kids, etc. We finally found a perfect one at a decent price. At first, everything was great, super nice neighborhood, decent neighbors. After a few months of buying the house, we rented an RV to go on a trip and parked it in the driveway for the 3 days leading up to the trip to pack it and for me to learn how half the things in it worked. Well, this is when we learned that HOAs are absolutely crazy, and our neighbor was on the board of our local HOA. Within an hour of it being parked, he got home and stormed over, demanding we remove it from his neighborhood or he would have it towed and fine us for every hour it was there. Myself, being the average and normal person, told him to kindly F off and get out of my driveway, and told him if he returns, I'll call the cops because he was screaming like a madman inches from my face. About 3 hours later, a big rig tow truck shows up, and he walked up like he was God and handed me a plain envelope with a letter inside that pretty much said, by order of the HOA, this RV is to be towed and a fine of $1,500 for violating the rules. While Mr. Crazy board member might not listen to reason, the tow truck guy they found wasn't so fond of entering my driveway and towing a vehicle when I told him if he comes on the property, I'll call the cops. Once the tow truck driver decided he was done being involved in this mess and left, the neighbor goes even more crazy and storms off. I call my friend to get his dad's number, because he's an attorney, to ask him about this insane letter and fine I just received, and to ask him some legal advice. After speaking to his father, he told me to come down, write him a $500 check, and bring along all the papers I received when purchasing the home and the current letter I just received. The next day, he had a very friendly letter sent to my neighbor and the HOA board, basically telling my neighbor to F himself in legal terms and to leave us and our property alone. I then continued to receive fines of $1,500 a day in plain envelopes, not postmarked, stuffed into my mailbox that I then turned over to my friend's father, and each time he sent another set of letters and contacted USPS to report the incidents. Turns out putting mail into people's mailbox is a crime. Who knew? Well, we decided to go on our week-long trip across the state and mildly forgot about it all. Kind of upset I had to spend $500 to have an attorney send letters, but that's what they do. Fast forward to us returning from the trip and the RV back in our driveway for 2 days so we can unload, clean it, then return it. Again, each day, more envelopes stuffed into our mailbox and more visits to our attorney and more letters sent and more incidents reported to the USPS. So here's where the fun really begins. Turns out Mr. Crazy finally gives me a summons to appear before the board. My attorney said this is crazy illegal because what they've done is use what looks like an actual legal document improperly to summon me to the board. Another $500 to the attorney, and we wait for the date they made, a Tuesday at 10 a.m. They attempt to keep my attorney out of the room on some board privacy rule, but quickly shut up when he begins going over their own rules that they are violating to them. Deep in the HOA book are some very nicely worded rules and stuff outlining about what makes board members ineligible, how they cannot serve if they commit certain infractions. Well, guess what Mr. Crazy Neighbor has done? Committed several of them, all documented. Also, the cherry on top is that if 51% of the HOA members vote to dissolve the HOA, it all goes away. Well, it happens that my wife worked part-time from home during this mess and had all the free time in the world to begin a disband the HOA campaign. Over the course of the next 2 months, she went around and really began to get to know our neighborhood really well. Turns out a lot of people dislike the HOA and the power-hungry seniors who act like dictators that run it. The HOA attempted to stall everything by holding no meetings, another HOA violation, and began their own campaign trying to change HOA rules to keep from being ousted, and a fairly racist flyer and letter to explain to everyone the dangers of not having an HOA and that all the bad people, blacks and Mexicans, that will move in and take over and sell drugs, etc., that our houses would become much less valuable and everything else they could try. Turns out it's extremely fun to use someone's own rules against them. The neighborhood even started a fund that paid us back what it cost us to get the money started and the continued costs he had. A few weeks after their failed fear campaign and being forced to hold a meeting, a vote was called by using their own rules. The HOA was no more, and all remaining funds were to be dispersed back to the homeowners and the members equally. This never happened. Turns out somehow the HOA used all their funds in the course of the last 2 months. About half the former board members sold their homes and moved, including Mr. Crazy Neighbor. I spent 3 hours trying to find old news articles because it was reported on mostly due to the racist letters by the HOA, but it was too long ago and I couldn't find anything. And our next story. I printed this money. I used to work in electronics for a large department store, so it was common that I dealt with large purchases of TVs, game systems, cameras, etc. Usually these were all paid for by card. I'd been through the training on how to detect counterfeit bills, though, since some people still used cash. A middle-aged man walks around the department for a bit, and after helping him pick out a TV, I go to ring him up. Purchase comes to around $700, and he paid in $100 bills. The man smiles, and in a very thick European accent boasts, "I printed those myself." I laugh and go to put the money away, but it feels lighter than normal. I do the usual tests, holding it up to the light, scratching the surface, and it fails all of them. This guy actually tried to use printed money. At this point, I call over a department lead to help me out because I've never dealt with counterfeit bills before. He smiles at the guest, says we'll hold his TV in the back room for a minute while we complete the transaction, and leads him away from the department. After about 15 minutes, I was told I was being replaced in electronics and spent the last 2 hours of my day giving a police report. The real question, OP, is would you have done those tests had he not joked about it? Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.